We got a mic this time. I tried yelling around a couple weeks ago and I wasn't able to. I gotta put it right here. Okay, got it. Okay, so we're gonna get right to the chase here. So, hi everyone, my name is Heather Tunold, and my ancestry is Sami and Norwegian, and I'm an uninvited guest to the stolen traditional territories of the Coast Salish people. And I'm also a harm reduction leader and a frontline worker of over a decade. I'm a social work student, I'm a parent, and of course, I'm a person with lived experience. From the years 2007 till 2013, I lived in the downtown east side, and I've had many experiences where my drug use was approached by a carceral system. So I want to share a bit of my story, starting with why I use drugs in the first place. While not every drug user has a traumatic backstory, my story does. I grew up in a dysfunctional home with neglect, abuse, intergenerational trauma. I'm just going to give a disclaimer here. This is the most vulnerable I've ever been in front of people. So, I think I control some of the narratives that I say. And so I'm just going to show up in my authenticity and vulnerability. And I had a lot of fears sharing some of this story, but here we are. Okay. I love you too. Okay. So, yeah, I grew up in a dysfunctional home with neglect and abuse and intergenerational trauma. I left my parents' home at 11 to live with another family, and I quickly found myself relying on unregulated drugs to survive. I tried meth for the first time right before my 13th birthday, and I didn't finish grade 7. I ended up unhoused with nowhere safe to go. And I don't think we acknowledge enough how substances often keep us alive, right? I was very shy, and I was very quiet, right? And I was living with undiagnosed autism and ADHD, but also the drugs that I used they helped me manage many traumatic experiences that I encountered throughout my life. When I was 13, I had been present when my street brother was murdered right in front of me. And as a 13-year-old, you really don't have the language or capacity to understand that kind of trauma, right? And with that experience and an overwhelming amount of isolation on top of sexual abuse and exploitation and bearing witness to often unthinkable forms of violence when navigating the poverty machine, it's what I survived was using drugs, right? And, as I was going through this, I had a very healthy distrust for the system's actors. So, of course, I kept all these things to myself, right? And I dealt with a lot alone. And substances helped me cope, right? And meth helped me cope. I don't think I'd be alive today if I didn't have access to the drugs that gave me the comfort that I needed, right? And I was criminally charged in relation to my substance use for the first time when I was 13 years old, right? Because I had a lack of adequate support. I managed to stay in the shadows, though, as I was surviving. And I think I did a really great job at surviving, but I hustled a lot of men that, probably shouldn't have been hanging out with 13-year-olds, but oh yeah. Oh yeah. But I shouldn't have had to be put in those situations, right? As a 13-year-old relying on older men to survive, right? And I had to survive this way because I was avoiding being taken against my will by the system, by the state, right? And I was a household name among the Penticton RCMP long before my 14th birthday. I found myself in and out of jail, right, for charges related to survival. I was often thrown into secure group homes with court conditions to not use. And I faced the threat of breaching my conditions and being thrown back in jail, right? And I must add that I never lasted more than one night in these places, even when they placed me in really rural and isolated foster homes, right? I would leave in the middle of the night. I would hitchhike across the province because that was the only option that I knew to be safer. My need for connection was never met or acknowledged by the system's actors, right? I was essentially infantilized and considered an unreliable narrator of my own life. The system actors only wanted to punish me. The pattern continued, right? I'd be placed somewhere and I'd run away, or I'd go to jail for 30 days, so on. One time, though, something different happened. I was arrested for a breach, and I was thrown into holding cells late at night during the winter of 2005. There happened to be no sheriffs available to take me for the 6-hour drive to the youth detention center in Burnaby, which usually that's what would happen, right, at weekday, and then they take me, for a little trip across the province. But I guess there was nobody available, right? No foster homes available either at the time. I was a minor, so they couldn't let me go. So my parents were also unreachable. So the Penticton RCMP ended up leaving me in a cell over the holidays with no human contact and no shower for almost 2 weeks. I felt alone and forgotten, and this experience really imprinted on me, right? During maybe my last days of my stay in segregation, my mom's uncle visited me, and he spoke with me through the glass room, and I thought he was going to bail me out. I was like, oh my God, I hate this guy, but I'm so glad. I was so happy because I was just a mess, right? I was relieved, but his intention was not to get me out. He just wanted to tell me how much of a piece of shit I was, and that he supported me being locked away to rot. This is all because I used drugs. Like, what the fuck? Like, you'd think I'd kill his dog or something. It's wild the way he treated me. And, I stayed. And I remember, I remember feeling so mad and defeated and powerless over this experience of thinking, okay, I'm going to get out. This is like fucking torture to me. And this guy, who also used drugs, by the way, he was a mark, also well-known mark in the community, and he had his own stuff going on, and he felt like he was better than me and wanted to shame me for just being a drug user. So yeah, like I felt this deep rage, and then you could only imagine how that kind of thing would imprint, right? And I think another day or so, I was finally released to a foster home, right? But the reason why I share that is because the way that I was treated, whether it was by the police or by my family members, really reflects that general attitude towards people who use drugs. And we deserve so much better, right? And I remind everyone that, when I think about how, I was doing this weird exercise with my therapist, and she's like, okay, we got to go to like this, this part of your life. And so we went to the 14-year-old Heather, and I was like, what did I actually need, right? She's like, what did you need? And I was like, I just needed a lot of crack, so I didn't have to rely on people, like God's forbid that I need drugs to survive, to feel good and to feel comfortable in my body because of all the things that I had experienced, because of the conditions that I was navigating, right? And I think that there's so much power to speaking that truth to power too, right? We just need to get sensible about all of that and be like, okay, people, like, why are people using drugs? Like I said, it's not always with a traumatic backstory, but I think with what I went through, I think it's quite natural for me to rely on another substance to kind of cope with, kind of get through, right? So I remind everyone that people who use drugs, they come from all different demographics, right? However, it's those who are most impacted by these draconian policies are people who live in poverty, right? People who live with brain injuries, racialized people, and of course youth, right? And I refuse to sit by as my community and loved ones are scapegoated amidst the attempts from the ruling class to invisibilize them. My comrades matter and deserve so much better. And lastly, and equally important, we got to name the things. None of us are free until we're all free. Long live the resistance of those in Gaza, Lebanon, the West Bank, Wet'suwet'en, all the other indigenous nations across Turtle Island, but got more, Kashmir, Haiti, Congo, Sudan, Tigray, and my Sami relatives in the northern Scandinavia fighting the oppressors and protecting our land. Thank you so much.